The Defense Department's new annual assessment of the Chinese military says the People's Liberation Army Navy is bigger now than the U.S. Navy. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for China, Chad Zbraja, says the PLAN is exploring establishing naval bases on several continents around the world. Roger Zakheim's director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library Foundation and Institute, former general counsel of the House Armed Services Committee. Roger, welcome. What's your takeaway when you look at this annual assessment?
Well, a couple of things. The first is the trajectory that we've anticipated China taking for some time continues to play out. The size of the Chinese Navy shouldn't be a surprise to anybody who's been following this, but it reinforces the point that China seeks to be a world-class military, and with that comes a rapidly changing world that threatens and certainly challenges our interests. And that's what we need to focus on. It's happening quickly.
What is your sense of what we're doing or not doing to counter that in the context of the National Defense Strategy, Roger?
Well, you're right to mention the National Defense Strategy. I think that's the most important first step, which is to basically say China needs to be the focus. They are the near-peer competitor. And everything we do as a Pentagon, as a military, should first and foremost be focused on China. That's the good news. We've been doing that. That came out in 2018. The question is, are we going to modernize fast enough? Are we going to make the key decisions to prioritize investments to address what China is doing? It's a competition. We need to create cost-imposing strategies. And I think the challenge for the military right now is, you look at the military in 2020, it's not radically different, maybe not significantly different than where we were a couple of years ago. And if that's the case, we're going to have difficulty keeping pace or keeping the edge on China.
The Army is into, I guess, the third year of its focus on the Big Six modernization priorities. The Navy and the Air Force don't seem to have the bumper sticker that the Army does, although they're both undertaking examinations of what they're doing and how they should be doing it 5-10 years out. General Brown, the new Chief of Staff, has a vision just published. What's your sense of what the right mix looks like for deterrence of China? That seems to be the biggest focus of the National Defense Strategy, is preventing war in the first place, so we don't need to engage with a power like China.
Yeah, I mean, we need to restore deterrence. We're in the competition. China, of course, is taking aggressive actions in their, near abroad, South China Sea being the most famous example. We have to make sure that our peacetime missions out in Asia are actually a deterrent and not working against our interests in the form of expending readiness, but really not deterring Chinese action. I think it's a combination of distributing our forces, key investments to counter what China is doing in terms of their missiles that can take out our ships. So it's a combination of presence and investments and modernization, perhaps moving away not only from the manned systems, but for the Air Force case, the unmanned systems, and then undersea capability continues to be a key focus for investment, where we're just not building at a clip that could give us the advantage that we're seeking.
Pretty much everybody in the Pentagon, I think, expects budgets to at least be flat and to maybe go down in the coming years, regardless of who becomes president in January of next year. You wrote an opinion piece for Fox News recently where you wrote, budget cuts have rarely, if ever, led to the necessary and important objective of reforming the Pentagon. What's that intersection look like, Roger, as your former committee and counterparts in the Senate start to look at how these things will play out in years to come, not just in this year's NDAAs, and as the appropriations committees look at 2021 also?
Yeah, I mean, the key is that they need predictable spending. You're right that the political environment right now certainly suggests that there won't be an increase in spending, not the kind that Secretary Mattis advocated to execute his national defense strategy, which he said was 3 to 5% growth each year. We're not going to be in that environment. As a result, we're going to have to make some bets here and prioritize. To the extent that the Pentagon can enjoy predictable annual funding, they'll be in a better position, but it's a disadvantage, no doubt, to execute the strategy that we were discussing earlier of 2018, the National Defense Strategy. So I think what you're going to see is an attempt to at least keep defense spending at flat, which actually means a real cut given inflation. But that's probably the best case scenario for the military right now when it comes to spending.
What does that mean then for the uniformed leaders who are deciding what their needs will be to then take to the civilian leaders and the civilian leaders to take to Congress? And again, not just in 21, what does 22, what does 23, what does 24 look like, Roger?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to have to make these tough choices, balancing readiness against modernization, right, and then recapitalization of existing platforms. I mean, inherent in the defense strategies is this tension, right? How quickly can we transform the military for 21st century warfare to prevail in a conflict none of us want? At the same time, how can we go ahead and achieve the deterrence that we discussed earlier, which requires presence today, using our capabilities today, making sure the platforms that we have in service are actually working and being put to use. Those three variables is a balance that's very tough to realize in this environment, and one that constantly pits today, right, the present, against what's needed for the future.
Roger Zakheim, thanks as always. Great to have you back.
Thanks for having me on.